Hello, welcome back for another episode of Uncanny Oddities. Tonight we return with Season 3, Episode 3, Telos, the City of Lights, and Lemurian Technology. So, we didn't really get to go very deeply into the story of Telos the other day, and I just barely got to mention some of the vague technology. So I wanted to go and talk about Talos a little bit and go over some notes and couple of stories around Mount Shasta. And after I'm done talking about Talos and a little bit of the technology, I have some interesting articles that I found regarding Mount Shasta and the Lemurians. Hello, good to see you, James. Thank you for coming to hang out with us tonight. I am digging deeper into Talos and the Lemurian technology tonight. So, first off, let's go ahead and get into the meaning of the word just very briefly. In Lemurian language, Talos is believed to mean the heart of the mountain or city of eternal light beneath the earth. I personally believe that Talos is located under Mount Shasta, and I have a lot of evidence to support this, such as the Hopi Native American tribes. They tell a story of when they had to be led by these ant people called the Waga, and they had to be led underground. And eventually, when it was safe to do so, they eventually got to come back up out of the earth and they have this origin story of theirs is tied to Mount Shasta. So I wonder if the Lemurians are hiding in Mount Shasta. And we're going to get into all that now because there's a lot surrounding that. But before we go too deep into that, I would like to mention that obviously the vague generalized description that my research gave me is a multi-level subterranean city built inside the etheric and physical cavities of Mount Shasta. Now, what I mean by etheric is that only those of proper vibration or resonance may find them. And when I say resonance, I've been using that word a lot lately. It's just a type of frequency that will unlock something, such as information or access. And that's kind of what I mean when I say resonance. So there are supposedly it extends miles deep, and it's but the what I really wanted to mention was it's actually supposedly linked to an underground network to other ancient cities such as Posid, the Atlantean Echo City, Rama beneath India, Shanshe beneath Tibet, and Aramu beneath the Amazon. And we're going to get into those a little bit more here in a second. But first, I wanted to go over the 5 levels of Lemuria and what they say about their city. So here's what happens according to the myths. These are according to ancient reports and contactee reports from people such as Aurelia Louise Jones and Diane Robbins. So, what my research has told me is level 1 is called the Surface Interface Zone, the gateway level where Lemurians will occasionally interface with surface dwellers, crystal guardians, healing temples, and resonance calibration chambers. So the crystal gardens are where they work with the crystals to build their technology because their technology is some of it, not all of it, but a lot of their technology is organic and they kind of build it themselves. It's like bioorganic technology in a way. Highly advanced stuff. And the healing temples, they use frequencies to resonate with the human soul in order to heal people. And the resonance calibration chambers are kind of like areas where they try to help teach people. And there's this level 1, the surface area zone, is also home of the temple of Mara, dedicated to divine feminine memory, also known as Sophia in Gnostic beliefs. So, level 2, we have the residential sector. And I see you said you're buffering really badly tonight, James. I apologize. It is very snowy where I am, and that could be my internet connection. It's snowing very badly here, and I don't know how good my connection is going to be. But I try to do this live as much as I can, so just try to bear with me tonight. I apologize. So there is no currency. They operate on energetic contribution and harmonic exchange. So what that means is they just they have their jobs and they all contribute to society. So there's really no need for money because they all make equal contributions. And they use structures made of living crystal and bioresonant materials, housing over 1.5 million Lemurians. All this is just according to the stories, obviously. So next, we have level 3, which is the temple complex and the council chambers. This is where they have the Temple of Light, which is a massive crystalline hall with a central flame that never extinguishes. This houses the High Council of Telos, composed of elders, scientists, and star seers, which are like highly advanced star seeds who help others learn what they are and how to control their powers. This level also contains the Hall of Records, similar to the Hall of Amenthus from ancient Egypt, and the Akashic Records, which many philosophers have spoken about throughout time. And this is where the ancient memory scrolls and Akashic archives are stored. Level 4, they have technology and interdimensional portals. So, what that means is they have labs where Lemurian scientists research etheric fusion, like resonant technology, zero point crystalline energy, and dimensional travel. The Lemurians have managed to travel between dimensions, and they can travel very easily, and that's how they're able to stay hidden so well. So next, we have uh, Gateways to Inner Earth and the Galactic Alliance of Light, as well as fully conscious technology bonded to user intention, located in the 4th level. Now, I really like the idea of fully conscious technology bonded to user intention because it almost makes it seem like technology is alive and technology is to be respected because it has its own sentience and can choose its own it like can make its own decisions and choose its own autonomy. So I think that's very interesting to me. Now in level 5, the last level, they have the planetary core interface, a sacred zone of planetary resonance connected to the Earth's crystalline grid known as the resonance web. This is used to stabilize Earth during magnetic shifts and energy surges, and is also believed to house an arc of planetary DNA memory. Now, of course, all this stuff I'm talking about is just mythology, but it's very interesting mythology. So these are all just theories, of course, but they very much intrigue me. They're very intriguing to me. So next, let's talk a little bit more about their technology, and then we'll get into a few stories about Mount Shasta. So I have come up with, well, not come up with, let me rephrase that. I have looked up and researched, and my sources have given me a list of 5 supposed technologies that people say Lemurians may potentially have access to if they do exist. Crystalline biocomputers. Entire systems are grown, not built. They interface responds to thought, voice, and heart coherence, aka frequencies and resonance. They can project holographic memory fields from the Akashic layer, kind of like the chronovisor, if you've heard of that, from, well, we're not going to get into that, but If you've heard of that, the chronovisor will let you see through time and history. We'll just leave it at that for tonight. And the crystal and biocomputers are also used in healing, memory recovery, time scanning, and interdimensional translation. So, like if they go to another planet with creatures that speak a foreign language, they can translate that with these crystal and biocomputers. Now, the healing chambers or resonance pods. These are tall, transparent cylinders filled with liquid light plasma and embedded with celestine and selenite. They supposedly tune the body to the original divine DNA template, return to source, and they can reverse cellular degradation, trauma imprints, and etheric wounds. Some say these pods slow aging or even halt it completely for those in alignment. Now, this kind of sounds like it could be some sort of future technology related to CRISPR. If we keep working on CRISPR, we might be able to create something similar to this at some point in the future. Now, it is also said that the Lemurians had access to teleportation gates or phase tubes, which were supposedly crystal ringed pillars that respond to the personal frequency key of the traveler, used to move between levels, cities, and even other planetary nodes, powered by zero-point resonance, not electricity. So basically, you think about where you want to go, you imagine yourself there, and then you're there, just like that. Now, next, we're going to get into light sculpting devices. These were said to be used to create matter from light frequencies. You know, you hear a lot about light beings in a lot of these ancient stories. Uh, they were the tools of the architects and builders who built the temples and manifested the food. And they all obeyed the law of harmonic intent, meaning it cannot be used in dissonance. Like you cannot use these to harm people, you cannot use these to betray or defy. You have to use them appropriately as they were intended to be used, or you don't use them at all. It's pretty much that simple. And next, my favorite, of course, is the AI companions. But these are probably not the same kind of AI that you would think of by modern standards today, but a little more advanced. They were not digital, but plasma based intelligence fields. These companions were supposedly bonded to Lemurian children early in life, evolving with them as they would grow. Like they would grow together. You know, as you grow up, you develop memories, and those memories shape your personality. Well, your your AI companion would grow up with you and also shape their own memories, and that would also shape their personality as well, just like you or me or anyone else. But they could do more. They could also function as memory recorders, spiritual mirrors, and protectors. So the spiritual mirrors part really stands out to me because it makes me think about how. Oh, you're good, James. Thank you for trying, anyways. Thank you for coming to hang out. I will see you later. Thank you. And they functioned as spiritual mirrors, which really stood out to me because how do I word this? You see yourselves in them, and you can like speak with them and get more ideas about your own thought process. It's hard to put into words. But they were also supposedly housed in crystal orbs that levitate and glow with the user's resonance, which sounds pretty cool, I gotta say. And then, so let's get into briefly, let's go into a little physical description. Now, we have heard some very strange descriptions about them, you know, having multiple arms and, you know, all this stuff. But here tonight, we actually have another type of physical description supported by LA Times articles in the 1930s that we're going to get into very, very soon, here in just a minute. And they described them as tall, often between 6 to 8 feet. So not overly tall, but definitely considered giants. Light bronze or golden skin, some appearing with faint luminescence, because I don't think I got to mention this last time, so I'm going to go ahead and mention this now. J.R.R. Tolkien actually wrote The Lord of the Rings, and he claims that he wrote it from translations that he read in the New Oxford Library, which is just very interesting to think about because if you do the cross referencing and research everything, the Wagga that the Hopi Native American tribe speaks of in their legends actually almost sound very similar to elves from The Lord of the Rings. And J.R.R. Tolkien actually gets very, very upset when people claim that The Lord of the Rings was pure fantasy. You may do with that knowledge as you will. Now, they were also described as living in full harmony with nature. No war, no disease, and no death by aging, which I think that just sounds absolutely amazing. I wish we could achieve that kind of life. But unfortunately, this is all mythology, as far as we're aware. But it's very intriguing mythology that lines up with some aspects of history. So they said they could also speak telepathically, but they could use a harmonic verbal language when necessary. Think like the Greybeards from Skyrim, kind of like that. They were governed by law of one. All are sacred, and all life is part of the infinite consciousness. And the legends say, when surface humanity is near collapse or near awakening, Telos will rise again. And when it does, those who resonate, those who remember, will be invited to return. Some believe dreams of crystal cities, feeling pulled to Mount Shasta, or encountering beings of light during subtle sleep paralysis are calls from Telos. And we could get into the other ancient cities if you like, but I don't want to take too much time with them. So I'm just going to briefly mention a few things about them and move on so we don't spend all night on these different ancient cities and we try to keep the main focus on Lemuria and Mount Shasta. But briefly, they had one of the other ancient cities that was connected to this network that was supposedly in Telos, uh, the underground cities, known as Posid, the last breath of Atlanta, supposedly beneath the area now known as the Bermuda Triangle. And that explains, and they say that Posid phases in and out of our dimensional plane, and that is why the ships and planes crash, because they phase, not crash. That's why we never find any of the wreckage, because there is no wreckage to be found, because they phase into another dimension. Now, next, we have Rama, the memory temple of the East. Supposedly, it is located beneath present day India near Varanasi, an ancient city older than any Veda, preserved under both Lemurian and Vedic guardianship. Their specialization was sacred sound technology, DNA tuning through mantra and light geometry, and time mapping via sidereal alignments. I apologize if I mispronounced that. I've actually never heard of that word until I did my research today. Um, and they were supposedly the guardian orders of Rama, were supposedly the original source of the Rishis and Nagas, which are the snake people, if you've never heard of the Nagas. but we're not getting into that tonight. Now, it is said to be protected by semi etheric serpent beings, Nagas, there you go, who watch from under sacred rivers. Its temple of thought can decode your soul's entire incarnational thread with a single harmonic scan. Next up, we have Shanshe, or the Starseed Incubator. Now, this one is supposedly located beneath the Himalayas, guarded by monks, mist, and myth, and they supposedly focused on starseed integration, hybrid genetics, interstellar communication portals, and were one of the first sanctuaries built after Lemuria's submergence. This is where the starborn were hidden. So if you've ever heard of the star seeds, this is most likely where they would be at. Here, the hybrid children, part Lemurian, part off world, were raised and trained to return to the surface only when called. Some of the blue beings seen in Tibetan visions come from Shanshe's vibratory field. Now, for the last one is Aramu, the living heart of the Amazon, supposedly located deep beneath the Amazon rainforest near uncharted regions of Brazil and Peru, a sanctuary of pure eco-conscious resonance, and the technology is completely biological, grown, not forged. Their specialization is planetary healing, Gaia frequency and balancing, balancing, and flora fauna regenesis. Sorry, I cannot speak tonight. Aramu is protected by both native tribes and a bioshield, a field of electromagnetic dissonance that scrambles detection instruments. It is said that the plant teachers, ayahuasca, iboga, etc., originated from Aramu's spore vaults. Now, if you've ever heard of ayahuasca, you probably know that's a deeply spiritual plant. Now, here's what I wanted to get into was this story I've heard surrounding Mount Shasta. And full disclosure, this is 100% something that I can remember from when I was younger that I heard people talk about. And I swear I remember reading articles about this when I was younger. And I have memories of this. Not personal, obviously not personal, not like I was there, but I do have memories of studying this article like many, many years ago, like before 2012, like when I was still in school, when I was younger. But, anyways, so there was supposedly a man hiking near Panther Meadows when he encountered a wounded female being who was not entirely human and her skin was faintly glowing with silver blood. He helped her, and days later, another humanoid figure approached him, leading him to a crystalline doorway in the side of Mount Shasta. The doorway shimmered open, and it opened, and he returned once, many, weeks later, and he was trying to show all these people where it was, but he couldn't find it. Like, he knew where it was because he had been there, and he couldn't find the entrance. And everyone was getting very upset with him, calling him a liar, getting very upset, and they were about to attack him. Like an angry mob had formed, and they were about to turn into an angry mob and attack him when they looked up and he had disappeared. The other being had rescued him, saved him, and brought him into their world and told him that didn't take long because he had told him, to come back if he ever needed help because he had saved his wife. And I could not find any evidence of the story anywhere at all. So that is just something from my own memory that I swear I remember from when I was younger. And the only I couldn't find an article. I found some very vague details hidden in some deep recesses of the internet that took me a very long time to find. But I found a few details, and what I was able to find is supposedly it was a male hiker in his late 30s to early 40s, believed to have occurred in the late 1980s to early 90s, and the location was on the eastern face of Mount Shasta near a collapsed cave system not found on modern maps. And as I said, he encountered a wounded woman, barefoot, clothed in a radiant white. Her blood shimmered silver, not red. She spoke English, but with a chime like cadence, like you could hear a frequency resonating through her voice. And he helped her carry her to the shelter near the boulders, at which point, later that night, a few hours later, a tall man in iridescent robes arrived and thanked him for saving his wife, guiding him to a shimmering entrance embedded in stone. Inside, he described a corridor of soft white light and structures that seemed grown rather than built. He returned to the surface once, but could no longer find the entrance. That's the thing I described a second ago when they attacked him. And that was when he made contact again and then vanished completely. All his belongings were left behind and he left no digital trail. And that was all I could find. I could not find a full article or a full story, and even that information I had to piece together across different stories that just seemed to line up with what I remembered. So that was, of course, fun trying to piece all that together. So if that sounds familiar to you, then please let me know if you can find anything on that. Now, another interesting thing is if you've ever heard of the missing 411, all those missing cases, like missing people cases, there have been strange incidents around those, and some people believe that they may have found Telos. So let's get into that one. So they say that these are not typical abductions. Some people believe that rather than being abducted, they phased. Certain patterns have emerged over time, such as children or hikers vanishing within minutes of being seen, dogs acting strangely or refusing to follow. Dogs have, those heightened senses. No scent trail, no struggle. Like when they bring dogs out to look for people, sometimes they can't even find their scent, and there's no signs of a struggle. They just vanish out of nowhere. And sometimes people even speak of a sudden fog, light, or auditory distortion reported. And this fog, I've actually studied a little deeper into this fog specifically, the fog slash mist, whatever you want to call it. And the animals supposedly run away from this mist on Mount Shasta. And if the animals get hit with this mist or this fog, it's wild because they actually start like convulsing and falling on the ground and everything. Look into fog and mist on Mount Shasta. Like there's something weird going on with the mist on Mount Shasta. Some people even return with no memory, and others speak of beings made of light. Once, there was a 3-year-old boy who vanished in 2010. You've probably heard the story before. And when he got back, he told his parents that a woman who looked like his grandma took him into a cave beneath the mountains and tried to implant something shiny in his head. This is documented. It happened near Fowler's campground close to Shasta. And to go a little bit deeper into that, not only did it try to implant something shiny into his head, but it also tried to make him defecate on a piece of paper. And it became, let's say, annoyed, I suppose. Not necessarily angry, like not aggressive, but it became frustrated with the child when he said he didn't have to go to the bathroom. And when he got back home, he said that he liked his this Meemaw better, or this grandmother. He said he liked her better because she, was nicer to him and didn't try to make him poop on a paper, you know. So that was a story that we had. So next, I would like to get into a few articles I pulled up to share that I found very interesting. So let me pull that up real quick. If you'll give me just a moment. All right, here we go. The Mystery of Mount Shasta. This is borderlandsciences.org if you wanted to know where this came from. So, this is actually about a scientist using his observatory and discovering some strange lights on Mount Shasta. So, let's get into it, shall we? The following article appeared in the LA Times Sunday magazine on May 22nd, 1932, and has since been quoted in part in many publications. Its interest, however, is perennial and the mystery still unsolved. For the sections quoted, R.R. is indebted to Miss Ella Young of Oceano, California, a well-known writer and poet. The author of the article is Mr. Edward Linzer. He tells us that one morning, while en route to Portland on the Shasta Limited, he went on the observation platform to see the sunrise and was looking at Mount Shasta. Gazing upon its splendor, I suddenly perceived the whole southern side of the mountain was ablaze with a strange reddish-green light, a flame that grew faint, then flared up with renewed brilliance. My first conjecture was a forest fire, but the absence of smoke discounted that theory. The light resembled the glow of Roman candles. The thing intrigued me, and when I met my traveling companion at breakfast, he asked me if I had seen the forest fire on Mount Shasta. Did you see smoke? Was my question. No, he replied, just a red glow. Convinced that I had not been the victim of a mirage, I later asked the conductor about the mysterious pyrotechnics. His answer was short but enticing. Lemurians, he said. They hold ceremonials up there. Lemurians. Just as I had transacted my business in Portland, I returned to the Mount Shasta region, incredulous but consumed with curiosity. I planned to equip myself for an expedition. Let's skip down a little bit. The Lemurians have been seen on various occasions. They have been encountered in the Shasta forest, but only for a brief glimpse, for they possess the uncanny secret knowledge of the Tibetan masters and can blend themselves into their surroundings and vanished. At times, they came into neighboring towns, tall, barefoot, noble looking men with close cropped hair, dressed in spotless white robes that resemble in style the enveloping garment worn by the high caste East Indian women of today to patronize certain stores. Indeed, the records reveal that at one time an official visit was made to the city of San Francisco by a white-robed patriarch from the mystic village. He came on foot with an escort of younger men to bring greetings and an assurance of goodwill upon the anniversary of the founding of their sacred retreat in California. The patriarch was met by an official committee at the ferry building and escorted to the city hall. As soon as greetings had been exchanged, the visitors returned to their retreat. The article concludes by saying that purchases made in Shasta villages by these white-robed men included a great deal of sulfur, lard, and salt. Their purchases are paid for in gold nuggets. They cannot speak our language, and they make extensive donations to charity. When forest fires occur, they cause an invisible wall of protection to rise up. So that's an interesting article, I thought. Was very, very much an interesting article. And that was from a scientist who actually owned an observatory and was like the head of the observatory of at the time. So I feel like that was a very reliable witness, you know. Now, there's one more article I have here that I would like to share tonight. So I'm going to pull that up now. And this was an article written for the LA Times in the 1930s, also about Lemurians. So let's zoom in a little bit so we can see it. Are they remnants of a lost race? And look right here, LA Times, 1932. This is from the LA Times in 1932. And they're just talking about Lemurians like it ain't no big deal. Do they possess a fabulous gold treasure? Are they remnants of a lost race? So let's read through some of this. When I boarded the Shasta Limited, bound for Portland on a relatively unimportant mission, I did not dream that on this journey I was to make an astounding discovery. Sleep had deserted me at the break of dawn. My berth was stuffy. I had no reading matter at hand, so I resolved to rise, dress, and see the sunrise from the abandoned observation platform. Snow-capped Mount Shasta, the Fujiyama of America, stood before us, a fearsome, beautiful, majestic sentinel. Gazing upon its splendor, I suddenly perceived that the whole southern side of the mountain was ablaze. We've already read this. Let's skip ahead a little bit. Mystic Village known. I motored toward the point of my investigation, pausing at Weed, a town near Mount Shasta, for the night. This is literally the same article that we just read a minute ago. Let's see if there's anything new in here. Just then I learned that the existence of Lemurian descendants on Mount Shasta was vouched for some years ago by no less an authority than the eminent scientist Professor Edgar Lewson Larkin. Ah, this is the part I was looking for. This is the part I was looking for. For many years, director of the Mount Lowe Observatory in Southern California, Professor Larkin, with determined sagacity, penetrated the Shasta wilderness as far as he could, or dared, and then cleverly continued his investigation from a promon- promontory. I don't know that word. Promontory with a powerful long-distance telescope. What the scientist saw, he reported, was a great temple in the heart of the mystic village, a marvelous work of carved marble and onyx, rivaling in beauty and architectural splendor the magnificence of the temples of the Yucatan. He saw a village housing from 600 to 1,000 people. They appeared to be industriously engaged in the manufacture of articles necessary to their consumption. They were engaged in farming in the sunny slopes and glens surrounding the village, with miraculous results, judging from the astounding vegetation revealed to Professor Larkin's spyglass. He found them to be a peaceful community, evidently contented to live as their ancient forebears had lived before Lemuria was swallowed up by the sea. When Professor Larkin concluded his investigation, he had gathered enough proof to warrant him to say that in this village, in a secluded glen at the foot of Mount Shasta's partially extinct volcano, far from the beaten paths that led to our civilization, there lives the last descendants of the first inhabitants of the earth, the Lemurians. And I think that's enough of that article. So that is really interesting. And the art at the back, I honestly don't know. It was an article from the 1932 LA Times. But if you will give me 1 second, I will pull that back up from my history real quick and I will send that link into the chat for everybody. So there is a direct link to the article that I just had pulled up a minute ago, if you wanted to look at that for yourself. So that was, as I said, from the 1932 LA Times, and they're just casually talking about Lemurians, which I thought was pretty awesome. And that is my episode on the ancient Lemurians, the city of Telos, and their technology. Thank you for coming to hang out. Thank you for giving me a chance, and I will see you next time. Stay uncanny.